It would be nice if people were less selfish. I would read more if I had more free time. Wouldn't it be nice if people lived forever? If it hadn't been for my math teacher, I would be more interested in mathematics. The sentences that you have just heard are all conditional sentences that speak about something desired, longed for, but unreal. And all of them contain the last modal verb that we'll be talking about in this series of lessons. They all contain would. Of course, the usage of would is not restricted to the conditional sentences of the second and third types, though mostly, of course, you will use them to speak about hypothetical situations. But apart from that, like the rest of the modals in English, would has a lot of other interesting meanings. Let's look, for example, at this sentence. He'd seek the truth. Is it a conditional sentence? Well, it depends on the context. He'd hate to be deceived. Is this a conditional sentence? Yes, it is. But how do I know it without any context? Well, let me explain. Would. So where do we normally see would? We normally see this word in conditional sentences because would is used to introduce imaginary ideas, something which we can imagine to happen on a particular condition. So mostly would is used to speak about something which is imagined but not real. Let's look. She would deny her part in the crime. If I were in your shoes, I would not or wouldn't do it. Would you hide it from your best friend? So as you see, in all of these examples, we use would to speak about something that we can imagine in a particular situation, on a particular condition. Would you hide it from your best friend? Would you hide it from your best friend if you had something to hide, right? Now, also, when we speak about would, we speak about invitations and requests. So would can be used in questions when you invite somebody somewhere or suggest something. It's a polite way to ask for a favor too. Would is used in deductions and it's a synonym of should in this meaning. So we can make logical conclusions about some situations using would. Would is used to express habits in the past. It's the synonym of the semi-modal verb used to. Similarly, we can use will in present to express something which happens repeatedly. And it's logical that in the past, instead of will, you would use would. Would is used in imaginary situations, as I have already said, mainly in conditional sentences. Would is used to express willingness or refusal to do something, often in negative statements. Just like will is used to express willingness or refusal to do something in the present. The car won't start, it's very cold. In the past would be the car wouldn't start, it was very cold. And would is, of course, the past form of will. It's important because you would use would instead of will when you sequence the tenses. Now let's talk about the first idea that would can express, its invitations and requests. Here we speak about the structure would plus like. It's a polite alternative to want. We normally don't use the word want when we don't speak to a friend we are really close with, want is very straightforward. So you don't say I want a cake, you say I would like a cake. Let's look at the examples. Would you like something to drink? Would you like me to help you with your suitcases? I'd like to borrow some other books of this author. Would you please stop talking? I can't concentrate. Be quiet until I return, would you? In all of these situations, we either invite somebody to do something or we say what we want to do in a very polite way. Would can express deductions. He would be at home at this time of the day. They would be in Paris now. I can deduct this because I know their schedules. I know that he usually is at home at 6 p.m. and now it's 6:15, so I can say that he would be at home at this time of the day. I believe so because I have some knowledge, and I can logically conclude it based on this knowledge. They would be in Paris now. I know that they were heading for Paris, and I know that their plane has just landed, so they would be in Paris now. I again have some information and I can logically conclude that they are in Paris now. Should may also be used the same way. He should be at home at this time of the day. They should be in Paris now. What is used to express habits in the past or habitual situations and routines in the past? My previous boss would always find some work for me at the end of the working day. For a month after the war, he would flinch at every loud sound. Fortunately, now he's much better. What do we see here? Here we speak about something which was very typical in the past, some habitual situations in the past, things that happened often in the past but do not happen anymore. To speak about habits in present, will is used. She will always leave the headlights on when she takes the car. He won't invite any friends when his father is at home. In these sentences we speak about things that happen all the time, habitual situations. It's typical of his not to invite any friends when his father is at home. He won't invite any friends when his father is at home. If we want to express the same idea in the past, we say he wouldn't invite any friends when his father was at home. Now, we can also use the semi-modal used to in the same situations. Both would and used to express habits and routines in the past. I used to spend less when I lived in my hometown. He didn't used to work 6 days a week. Okay, now let's look at these. In this time of the year, rain would stop for short periods of time and then it would pour down again. She would spend hours writing alone in her room. Would is more formal. It cannot be used to express emotions and emotional states. Used to can be used to express both actions and emotional states and is more common in everyday speech than would. You'll see would in stories, in novels, in a written form more often than in everyday conversations. Would can express willingness or refusal to do something. The car wouldn't start on frosty winter mornings. My younger sister would never listen to my advice. Please note that to express willingness or refusal to perform an action in present, we use will. The airline won't return my money for a cancelled flight. The engine won't start when it's that cold. If you will wait a little longer, you'll be able to meet the band in person. In the last example, we have a conditional sentence. We still use will here because it's a modal will and it stresses somebody's willingness. So only if you are willing to wait a little longer, you'll be able to meet the band in person. We speak about the case of using will in conditional subordinate clauses in more detail in the lesson dedicated to the modal verb will. So please check that if you're interested. Now, of course, we use would in imaginary situations. As I have already said, this is the main type of sentences where you see would. We would stay at that hotel, but it's too expensive. What would you say if I sought your advice? If their employees were paid better, they wouldn't ask for a pay rise. It would be nice to live somewhere by the sea. Had she not been late for the interview yesterday, it would have been much easier for her to make a good impression on the HR. I wish you would stop whining. Would that they finally make peace. What do we see here? Conditional sentences. All these situations are unreal. By unreal, I mean that they are contrary to the fact. They are contrary to what we have in reality. They are imaginary or desired, but they are not real today. Please pay attention to the last two sentences. I wish you would stop whining. We can absolutely say, I wish you stopped whining. But would here is emotional. It stresses our irritation. Yeah, it shows that we really don't like that the person is whining and we want him to stop. We want it very much. Yeah, I wish you would stop whining. Would that they could finally make peace. Yeah, this exclamation expresses desire. Would that, like, oh, I wish. Yeah, how I wish. Would that they could finally make peace. Okay, let's compare these two sets of sentences. I will stay for a little longer. I have a free evening. I would stay for a little longer if I had time. The first sentence states what you will do. That's the indicative mood. We speak about something which is real. I would stay for a little longer if I had time. This is a conditional sentence. I would stay if I could, but I can't. This situation is imaginary. Another set of examples is I will buy a new car as soon as I have enough money, and I would buy a new car if I had enough money. The first situation is real. The person expects to have more money in the nearest future. I would buy a new car if I had enough money. The second sentence expresses something which is desirable but not real. Usually your choice of will or would depends on your attitude to reality, whether you believe that something may come true or not. If you don't believe in it, you say, oh, I wish I could, I would, but, yeah. Let's continue. The sequence of tenses. When we sequence tenses, will becomes would. So, would is the past form of will for such sentences. Let's see. Direct speech. I will come tomorrow. Indirect speech. I said I would come the next day. We reported somebody else's speech, somebody else's words, and as soon as we have said, yeah, the first predicate in the past simple, we need to follow the rules of sequence of tenses. We need to use the so-called future in the past. So we cannot say, I said I will, yeah? I said I would come the next day, or he said he would come the next day. Tomorrow is also transformed into the next day, because what was tomorrow yesterday becomes something else today. Yeah, it's not tomorrow anymore. So logically we have to use something else, and the substitute for tomorrow in such cases is the next day. We will be working at this time tomorrow. They said they would be working at that time. Again, the next day. She will have finished the book by then. She said she would have finished the book by then. By the end of December, they will have been living here for a year. They said that by the end of December, they would have been living here for a year. We have 4 future tenses, and that's why we have 4 equivalents of them in the so-called future in the past. Please note that the rules of sequence of tenses should be followed not only after the verb said. It's not restricted to the indirect speech. Let's see what I mean. He promised there would be no problems. I promise now. I promise there will be no problems. He promised there would be no problems. The verb is different, but the situation is the same. My predicate is in the past, so I cannot use any future tense in the subordinate clause. I will have to use would instead of will. Deep inside, he knew he would soon change his mind. I'm not talking about any indirect speech here. Yeah, I'm describing a situation, but as the predicate of the main sentence here is in the past, I need to follow the rules of the sequence of tenses, and I will use would instead of will. He knows he will soon change his mind, but he knew he would soon change his mind. I texted them immediately as I thought they would be happy to know the news. I thought they would, but I think they will. She hoped they would be able to spend their honeymoon in Italy. She hopes they will, but she hoped they would. I hope that's clear. Let's move now to some expressions with would. Would you mind is one of the most common expressions that you will hear with would. Would you mind plus gerund. Would you mind opening the window? Would you mind my smoking in the hall? Please pay attention that it's my, your, his, her, their, yeah? Smoking in the hall. Would you like plus infinitive or something? Would you like one more candy, or would you like to spend the weekend in Switzerland? I'd like, that is, I would like, plus infinitive or something. I'd like to ask you several questions. I'd like to go to the beach later in the evening. So these phrases are used to suggest something, or to offer something, or to ask for permission to do something. Now we have two very similar phrases which are grammatically very different. I'd rather, I would rather plus the bare infinitive, that is the infinitive without the particle to. And I'd rather plus somebody plus past simple and or past perfect. Let's see. I'd rather eat a salad for lunch and leave the chicken for dinner. I'd rather not go there by train. It would be much faster to fly. I'd rather do or not do something. You express your preference, yeah? I'd rather do this and not that. I prefer to do this and not that. But the structure I would rather somebody did or had done something has different grammar and expresses what you expect from another person, what you expect somebody else to do. I'd rather you didn't take my shoes without asking me first. I'd rather you didn't do it. In other words, please don't do it, I don't like it. I'd rather you didn't take my shoes. I'd rather she stayed at home with the kids. I would prefer it. I'd much rather they didn't buy that house. It's a bad investment. You can add much to emphasize your idea. I'd much rather they didn't buy that house. I really don't want them to buy that house. It's a bad idea, it's a bad investment, okay? Then, would sooner or would just as soon plus the bare infinitive mean the same as would rather plus the bare infinitive. I don't want to go to the cinema tonight. I'd sooner stay at home and watch Netflix. Thank you for your recommendation, but I'd just as soon go to our local hairdresser. And the last thing to note here, please pay attention that the phrase would better does not exist. What we should say is had better. Why do people confuse these two? Because in both cases, the shortened form looks the same. So if I contract had, I will get apostrophe and D. And the same contraction I have for would. You'd better remember that would better is incorrect. Let's look at would in popular music. Look into my eyes. Can't you see they're open wide? Would I lie to you, baby? Would I lie to you? Don't you know, girl, it's true. There's no one else but you. Would I lie to you, baby? Yeah. So this is a very popular song, and it's called Would I Lie to You by Charles and Daddy. And what is used here to express a hypothetical situation. Okay, and this one, and now I don't know why she wouldn't say goodbye. But then it seems that I had seen it in her eyes, and it might not be wise, I'd still have to try. With all the love I have inside, I can't deny. This is a song by Guns N' Roses, This I Love. It's a very sad song, and as far as I remember, it's autobiographical. Would here plays a different role, and now I don't know why she wouldn't say goodbye. The author sings here about a situation which repeated itself many times in the past. She wouldn't say goodbye. Like every time we parted our ways, she wouldn't say goodbye. She didn't do it repeatedly, yeah? She didn't use to say goodbye. The second would in, and it might not be wise, I'd still have to try with all the love I have inside. I would have to try. Have to is a semi-modal verb, so we see that the modal verb would is used here together with a semi-modal. I just want to remind you that we cannot use two modal verbs together, but we can use a modal verb and a semi-modal verb, and have to express its necessity. I'd still have to try in a hypothetical situation. So would in this case introduces a situation which is hypothetical or imaginary. Okay, this was the last video on the modal verbs of the English language. Next time we'll have a little revision of what we have learned about the modal verbs in this series of lessons. If you have any questions, comments or suggestions, please leave them down below. If you are interested in more grammar lessons like this, subscribe to this channel and see you in the next video.